Might governments go overboard in reacting to the recent financial crisis? Joining us for this week's Smith Business Close-Up is Professor Kislaya Prasad, a research professor and director of the Center for International Business Education and Research at the University of Maryland's Robert H. Smith School of Business. Professor, thank you for being with us. And let's talk a little bit about these economic controls. What are they, and why would a country want to do this?
Well, the best example of controls are trade restrictions. So you could have tariffs, for instance, or you might have import and export licenses that require you to go get permission from the government before you can import some good or before you can export to another country.
And the country might turn to those sort of restrictions because their domestic economy is lagging and they see a threat from overseas?
Yes, in general, they feel that the industries in their country need to be protected from competition from more efficient overseas producers. And in doing so, what they're doing is they're preventing two people from trading with one another. So I might want to buy, for instance, a car made in another country, but to protect the domestic industry for automobiles, governments might decide that cars imported should have a 200% tariff, or only so many can be imported into the country, which has the same net effect of raising the price of foreign competition within the country.
And it's an appealing thing. I mean, we can understand it just in terms of the U.S. economy at the moment, where we've seen so much outsourcing, offshoring of production jobs. We're having unemployment difficulties at home, so making those overseas goods more expensive might seem like a slam dunk.
Absolutely, because, people overseas don't vote and people within the country do vote, so there's always pressure from domestic interests to impose controls and at the expense of foreign competition. So for politicians, it is indeed very, very tempting to go in for some form of control or another. So.
But you've found some problems with the side effects of this. How did you go about studying this?
So the side effect, there always is a side effect because whenever you stop people from trading with one another when they want to, they will try and contravene the methods that you try and use. So that if you put in place controls, they will try and contravene controls. And the experience historically with prohibitions, for instance, has been unambiguous. It forces transactions underground. So during the U.S. History, during Prohibition, there was a time of great violence. And the same thing has been true in other countries. So if you put in place trade restrictions, smuggling starts becoming very attractive. And the problem with smuggling with respect to crime is that people who are engaged in illegal transactions don't have access to courts and other mechanisms that we have to resolve disputes. So they're going to find other ways to resolve disputes. Inevitably, violence becomes a temptation, and we have a lot of violent crime. So, names like Al Capone became famous in the United States during Prohibition. Similarly, in India, during the age of great economic restrictions, names like Haji Mastan and Chota Rajan were just as famous. So when you have illegal transactions, people don't have access to courts. They need to find ways to resolve disputes, and often they do it through violence.
So what's the takeaway here from a public policy perspective? Is it that no sort of restrictions are workable, or that within the menu of possible restrictions on trade, there are some that are better maybe than others?
Both. First, of course, if one can avoid restrictions, that would be good. But that's not always possible, and I, wouldn't go so far as to say that, we should. The implication of my studies that we need to legalize drugs or anything like that. But what I want to say is we're presented with a trade-off, and we have a menu of options. Different kinds of restrictions might have different effects on violent crime, and for some goods, restrictions may not even make sense. So, I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that for policymakers, they need to take the possible effect on black market violence into account when choosing different forms of restrictions.
Very good. Dr. Kislaya Prasad joining us from the Smith School of Business. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.